Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, The Inked Reader. This is actually the first video I am filming officially in 2023. Now, I am gonna be short and sweet in saying that I decided to mesh this video up with two ideas. So I wanted to wrap up the things I've read in December, however, because we are already a week past the first week of January, I thought not many people might just be interested in just watching a December wrap-up. However, because I've read nice things and things I want to share with you, I still want to do the wrap-up. So I'm gonna combine the books and graphic novels just because I've read a couple of those in one wrap-up, and then also I'm gonna wrap up the whole 2022 year, in the sense I'm gonna give you statistics of how much I've read, what I've read most of, and so forth. So the way I'm gonna structure these is, first of all, I'm gonna do the statistics. You're gonna see the video in a second. Then I'm gonna talk about my wrap up for December 2022, and then I'm gonna wrap up the whole year. I'm gonna put timestamp in, so people that are not interested in just a review of books, they can still watch the second part of the video, just in general stats on 2022. But without further ado, let's get into the stats. Okay, and as always, this chair has been named by one of you as Padre, and she is very squeaky, and so if she makes weird noises, I can promise you it's the chair. However, I also bought a camera stand, so I might be filming on my feet very soon. So as always, I'm gonna go from the least enjoyable to the most enjoyable thing I've read in the month of December, and I'm gonna do the graphic novels, just a couple of them, at the end of this wrap-up. In terms of books, I've read 6 books in the month of December, which is good considering that I was traveling for a couple of weeks in Italy. And at number 6, I'm gonna put an Italian book that my mom gave it to me just to read. I was just borrowing it from her, and this is called Una vita sottile. It's not translated or anything, and I really didn't enjoy it because this is a non-fiction about the experience of the author with anorexia. However, what she does in this book is basically writing a book of letters to her friends that were with her during tough times, and there is nothing about her own experience of the illness and so forth. So for me, it was just pretty meh. I wanted to know more about her own personal experience, lived experience with anorexia. Instead, I just got love letters to friends, which is okay if you are her friend, but I just didn't care that much. However, the message of people in your life that support you do play a major role. That was very important. So I ended up giving these 2 stars overall. I like the message behind, but it was not what I was looking for. And number 5, there is actually a book that I brought with me to Italy and left it there because I didn't feel a need of bringing it back. And that is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I finally read that, and I finished that on Christmas Day because I was sick with the flu, in bed, on holiday. Great. And I had given you a very brief synopsis in my TBR for December, saying that this book is about this bunch of students in this dark academia setting that kill their professor, basically, and you follow what happened there. That is incorrect. This book is about this bunch of students that don't kill their professor but kill someone else, and you follow what happens after that and now their lives unravel as a consequence of this act. I have to say that unfortunately dark academia, I guess it's not a buzzword for me, and I've tried now a few of them, and I think that The Secret History is considered the staple of dark academia literature, and I ended up giving this 3 stars. I was very meh about the whole thing, and I don't know, I thought there was so many wars, 600 pages of a plot that could have stayed in a 100 pages book. Now Tart, she's so skilled that she will make you read 600 pages because of her writing, but ultimately when you sit down, step back and just realize what is this actually about, how much content there wasn't that much, not to justify such a lengthy book. So therefore I ended up feeling very the mystery, the tension wasn't very there, because we know at all times what happened, who did what, and it's, I guess, the tension about other people finding out, or the police, or whether, was just not very much built up. It wasn't just there. You just see the life of these people coming apart, and you know, whether you want to call it, but that wasn't that good for me. I don't know. I thought, I didn't hate it by any means. I read it and I never thought about putting it down, but ultimately it was very just meh. A book that I left in Italy, I don't need to keep it, I will never reread it. However, it'd be interesting to see probably this in a movie or something. Maybe that can juice things up a bit, that can make it a bit more entertaining than it actually was. If you like Dark Academia, a bunch of unlikable characters, I guess this might be for you. I don't know, I guess Dark Academia is just not my cup of tea ultimately. Maybe it will redeem itself in 2023. At number 4, I do have Pachinko. Now, Pachinko is a historical fiction book, and it's a family saga book, so you follow this family for 100 years, pretty much. The first half was extremely good, like I was hooked, I was so fascinated by this world, this family, you know, all the tough times I had to go through, all of these young women had to endure and overcome, and how strong-willed she was. And I really appreciated the fact that this showed me a reality that, unless I read about it in a literature fiction or a non-fiction, I would never know. It's such a reality that's so far away from what I've lived or the history I've studied, that if it wasn't for this, I would be completely ignorant. So this taught me a lot of things, and for that I'm very grateful. However, I do have some critics. While the first half I found very strong, the second half I thought that the children that we follow and the other generation are less interesting in a sense, and I just spent less time with them. So I kind of found myself being less attached than I was to Sunya, I don't know how you pronounce it. And also, like, her and Hansu, I just wanted to have more closure to them. I wanted to see them more in the latter part of their life, see more what happened to them, their relationship, or even them being apart, what that did to them. I found that they were kind of put aside to leave room to the new generations. However, I didn't find the new generations as interesting as those two. Said that, I gave it 4 stars, and I have great hopes for the TV show, which I'm gonna probably binge watch at some point. At number 3, I have A Dowry of Blood. I've done an unboxing for the Fairy Loot edition, which is stunning, and I'm just going to show you with pen and paper, because this is a fantasy, dark fantasy if you want. It's a vampire fantasy actually, where you follow a bride of this vampire being saved by him and eventually falling out of love with him, and why she decides to kill him. You know from the beginning that she has killed her husband, this vampire, and you kind of then backtrack and see her origin, her becoming vampire, and what led to murder eventually. And I think this was uniquely written. I really liked the writing, and I really was looking for very good vampire literature, and these delivered in that sense. It was very gothic, it was very hunting. However, I didn't love this as much as other people did, and ultimately I think because we are told that this vampire is a monster, but we are not showing that much of monstrous acts for us then to say, oh, okay, he did that, he did that, he did that, he did that, he said that, he did that, so, you know, he deserved murder. I'm 100% convinced that he did deserve it, but I think the author chose, and I have to respect that, to show us a side of the story from the main protagonist that is more hinted at rather than shown, which is something that I might even appreciate, because who am I to say I want to see more of the abuse, because this is definitely a domestic violent relationship in a sense, but I wish it was shown more. I wish that the abuse, other, you know, even the intellectual abuse, even the emotional abuse was shown more. We were given more scenes of that, so we would then feel the hatred and that, you know, all the kind of regret and love and, you know, doubts that our main character has. We know that she has all of these things because she tells us, but she doesn't tell us why a lot of the times. So that was lacking for me, and that's why ultimately I gave this 4.25 stars. I really enjoyed the writing. However, I have to say that in the end there is like a short story just to wrap it all up, which is pure erotica fantasy, and I didn't give about that one, and I was just like, why? I mean, if you're horny, I guess that's it for you, but for me, nothing. I would have just wished the book ended I had without a short story. However, I will keep an eye out for this author. I think it's a debut, if I'm not mistaken. It's a remarkable debut. It was overall very good. I needed these to finish the year with a good vampire book. At number 2, I have a very much a surprise. I have a YA fantasy, kind of sci-fi. This is Diabolic. I had this book for years and never picked it up. Sci-fi, you got this humanoid creature that appear human, and they take their role as bodyguards of real human. In this case, we have like a overpowering family of rulers. They're very abusive toward their population, and all of a sudden they require the daughter of one of their chiefs or senators or whether to go, kind of like a hostage situation, like how they would do in history, where, you know, you would give your son to the ruler of the enemy ruler just to keep hostage so you behave. So a situation like that, and they decide to send this nemesis, this humanoid that can appear like she's the actual daughter instead of the actual human daughter. Don't know if this makes any sense. Anyway, this was something. I can't remember the last time a YA actually kept me on the edge of my seat as much as this did. This is full of political intrigue, and for someone who has kind of got a bit of fed up with YA romances and I found them repetitive and they don't bring anything new, the couple in these, I'm here for it. Like they are sick, both of them in their own way, and I love them together and I love them apart as their own individual characters. So that's why maybe they worked so much for me in this book together also. All the twists, my head is still spinning from them, and although this wasn't realistic, like characters got away with things that even in that world would not make sense. I would have died a million times. This was so thrilling that I don't care, and I will suspend belief, and I'll just go ahead with this ride. I think it's a trilogy, and I can't wait to read the sequels, hoping that they are as high tension and entertaining as this one was, and I end up giving this 4.575 stars. Now, speaking of suspending beliefs, let's talk about my number 1, which is Ballad of Never After. Now, I've turned around my copy of a fairy edition, but can we appreciate this? This is another YA actually. This is by Stephanie Gerber, probably I'm butchering the name, who wrote the Caraval series. So this is a follow-up series. I've unfortunately, my bad, not read Caraval before, and I heard that you should, because this would make more sense. And I'm not even attempting a synopsis of this. First of all, I don't want to spoil potentially anything from whoever has not read Caraval, but let's just say that it's about these humans and fates, and I don't know, are they fairies? I don't know what they are. And you got this couple in particular, who are not actually a couple, these two people, they hate each other and they have to just go on adventures after adventures together. So abandon reality, who enter, to rephrase a very popular Dante sentence. This was just, again, so entertaining. And I think, in a sense, abandon reality, suspend belief is easy to do in this kind of book because it doesn't even try to be realistic, in a sense. You are reading about humans with natural pink hair, you're reading about fates, fairies with blue hair, magic powers, magic kingdoms, and, everything is magic. So because of this fantastical, whimsical, and so just entertaining world you are in, you can suspend belief. And the couple in this, which are not couple, and can't be a couple, but I want personally them so much to be, and they just can't be. And it's just frustrating, but at the same time, it's a kind of frustrating that keeps you glued to the pages. And it's just entertaining for the sake of being entertaining, I think. But she has a very, just very fluffy writing, a writing that makes you feel very immersed in this world, and you just care about these characters that behave in absurd ways. And I understand why so many people would hate these and find the characters so annoying. But for me, I just really care about them. I don't know, I like how absurd, how volatile they are. And this use in the end a trope that I hate with a passion. And with any other book, or with the majority of other books, I would probably put the book down and just say, you know what, I hate this so much, what you did in the end. But with these, because of the word and the characters, I just need to know, so I will keep going. So I forgave these to use the worst trope you can use, in my opinion. So, and I can't say because it's spoiler. So I give this 4.5 stars. Again, it's not 5 stars because definitely the trope irritated me so much. But I am, first of all, in awe of this edition, how beautiful it looks. And I'm here for it. I'm here for it. This is my guilty pleasure. Definitely, it's one of a few YA that I'm still looking forward to the new release of. Which should be a trilogy. And I'm gonna finish with the 2 graphic novels, and again I'm gonna put them in order from, you know, what I enjoyed the most and what I enjoyed the least, in a sense. So I read 2 of them this month because I traveled. I left on the 14th, so I really didn't have much time. And on number 2 we will have Fables by Bill Willingham and other people. This is the 15th and final volume in this very lengthy fantasy / urban fantasy fable fantasy saga. I've been with that for years now. These are the stunning deluxe editions, and I have to say that I definitely preferred and loved volume 14 way more than I did these. This does, I'll show you what this even opens up, like it's a full panel stuff. Like, I don't want to spoil it for people, just know that this one opens up and it becomes something majestic. So art-wise, this was amazing. We also have a lot of guest artists in this, which I really enjoyed. But in terms of the actual conclusion of this lengthy saga following different plots, was ultimately a bit disappointing. This does what the last movie of Twilight, or Twilight in general, Breaking Dawn, does. So if you've seen Breaking Dawn Part 2, the movie, this does something like that. And it's not my favorite thing to do. I recognize it can be clever in certain instances. It gives you, you know, the action that you wanted to see without actually giving it to you, if it makes sense. I don't want to spoil anything. But at the same time, I was just like, after all of these, I wished for something more intense, in a sense. So it's a lot of build up, and then the end, and it's just like, okay. What I really appreciated though is that each of the characters, because you follow Fable characters, so all you beloved Fables from Grimm's, Disney, eventually Disney, initially from other authors, you have like short chapters finishing their own story. So for example, the last Beauty and the Beast story, and so you've got guest artists drawing like a 3-4 pages short story to end that character story, because you have a main plot, which is the majority of this, but then you've got these snippets of, you know, the last story of Cinderella, the last story of the Beauty and the Beast, and so on. And that was all done by guest artists, and then that I really appreciated. So I ended up giving this 3.75 stars because ultimately I love the short stories to conclude them, but overall I was a bit disappointed. However, Fable is still something that I will love and cherish and reread in the future over and over again. First of all, because of the graphics. I really like also all the guest artists that took part in these, and the overall, all the characters. I think upon reread I will get so much more of the side characters, the side stories, and even the overall plot. So it's definitely worth a reread. And I really also enjoy the fact that this gives a message in the end that fables never really end, because you can always pick it up again and start again. You can always give it to someone else, and they can have their own interpretation of that fable and what is the message behind. So I really like that kind of message. And at number 1 for graphic novel wise, I'll have to put The Sandman Volume 4. I started rereading these because I had just read the first couple of volumes and I wanted to watch the TV show, which I ended up doing. I'm gonna wrap that up in what I watched recently, and then I continue on. So this was the first time reading volume 4, and I think the plot in this really touched upon all the things I love in fantasy, and the dark fantasy I love, the horror fantasy I love. So there is a hell plot, don't want to spoil anything in here, which I really absolutely loved, glued me to the pages. Really, it was really fascinating, the choice that Lucifer does in this, and it was food for thoughts on, you know, what would happen, and I found that what would happen was very well done. So I gave it 4.75 stars, like it was very close to 5 stars, probably even 5 stars. My favorite volumes thus far. Plot wise, I'm still not giving this a full 5 stars, again because of the art style. I've said this a million times, is just something that I don't love, unfortunately. And when I am digesting a story in this format, which is, you know, visual as well as reading it, it has to be both things that come together for me to give a full 5 stars. However, plot wise, really love that. Favorite volume would be, plot wise, would be a 5 stars. And that's it for the wrap up. So that's all things I've read to end up the year. It was an amazing year. I'm just gonna go through some of the stats of the year, how much I've read, what I've read most of, and so forth. I have to say that I'm gonna do videos on my favorite books, my least favorite books, my most disappointing books, as well as separate videos for my favorite graphic novels and manga. And I guess I don't have many dislikes, so I might just not do like a dislike or least enjoyable. Manga might just be more disappointing, because I honestly don't think I gave any graphic novel or manga less than 3 stars this year, because I'm very picky buying them. So that's why, probably why. But without further ado, I'm gonna give you stats. Unfortunately, the way I structure my reading journal, I did make some distinction between graphic novels and books, but not enough for me to make them easy compile different stats. So what I'm gonna do in 2023 is keeping completely different reading journals, one for graphic novel, manga, one for books. So at the end of the year in 2023, I will give you stats just for the graphic novel, manga. But for this year, I'm gonna tell you when I have distinctions between the two, but mostly it's gonna be a combined thing. You're gonna see in a second. A Goodreads challenge initially was 120. I read a total of actually 197 things this year, which is stellar. It's brilliant. It's the best year I had in a very long while. Of those 197 things, 113 were books and audiobooks combined, and 84 were graphic novels or manga. And of those 113 books, 24 were audiobooks. All the rest were physical books. So that is amazing, because I've read so many physical books this year. I wish I could have gotten to 100 physical books. Didn't get that there, unfortunately, but it was close, and I really appreciated a lot of audiobooks I've read. I had only 6 DNFs that I could find from my Goodreads, which is also good. I guess 6 DNFs in a whole year, and the total amount of pages, just considering the physical books I've read, so not audiobook and not graphic novel or manga, so just the physical books, I've read a total of 34,825 pages. In terms of reading challenges, I finished 2. So I had finished in 2022, but I initiated in 2021 the reading 10 Japanese horror books. And I also done completely from the beginning to the end a second challenge, which was reading your most disturbing books. The books most disturbing you have ever read. So I've done a video, and I've mentioned this a couple of times now on my channel, that years back I had done a video of reading the 10 most disturbing books ever written according to an article I found online, and then you left your own recommendations. The viewers left recommendations of what they found most disturbing in the horror genre or, you know, literature fiction. So I picked up 6 of those and completed that challenge in October. You can find it on my channel. Finished series for books. I just finished 4 series this year, which sucks. I honestly, I started so many new series which I said I should have not done, and I just completed 4 of them. But remarkably, I did finish the Disco World series, which is 41, I think 41 or 42 books long series. So this year I finished the Disco World series, not including short novels, but that is, for me, is an amazing achievement, because I've been reading the Disco World since I was a teen, and this year finally I've read all of them, all 41 of them. And in terms of graphic novel and manga, I finished 5 series in total. 1 was a manga series, and all the other 4 were graphic novel series, including Preacher, which is one of my GOAT series when it comes down to graphic novel series. So not much, but all the series I finished it was an achievement for me, because graphic novels, especially manga, can be very lengthy. And I also finished, but I'm included in here, the first half of Chainsaw Man, but again I've not included in here because technically it's not finished. Now my average rating was 3.9, which is not too bad. It's almost close to 4. And when I looked at my reading diary, for example, I have this page here where I put all my ratings. The majority, as you could see, are in the 4-star columns, and I have more 5 stars than many of the past years, so that was very positive. I started my shelf TBR in 2022, where I would pick every month, or most months, a random shelf from behind me and have to read all the unread books on that shelf, and I managed to go through 9 of them with some leftovers, but most of them I've completed and read the majority of books that were there unread, or there were books in a series where I was up to that point. There is like a video linked down below when I explain how the TBR works, because it's going to continue in 2023. Now, the shortest book I've read was Finn by Stephen King. It was a new release by Stephen King, a short novella, and was only 35 pages. However, I listened to this on audiobook, and the lengthiest book I have read is The Labyrinth of the Spirits, which concludes the Shadow of the Wind quartet. That was 816 pages. The average book length that I read was 359 pages. Didn't feel like it. Felt like all my books were like 800 pages. The book that was most shelved, so the book that was on most people's shelves on Goodreads, was Wuthering Heights, that I read, a classic. And the one that was least shelved is actually, less people knew about it. It's the Kurosagi Delivery Corps service, which is a manga, and it's a paranormal manga that I think I've never seen anybody else read. I'm sure there are people that read it, but on BookTube I've never heard anybody reading it, seeing it, so I wasn't surprised when it appeared as the most unpopular, most unknown book I had, manga in this case, that I read. In terms of sex of authors, that I knew, and I didn't consider that some books are co-authors, and of course graphic novels and manga have many authors, so this is just, take this with a pinch of salt, it's very general stats, but I've read 93 things written by female authors and 103 things written by men. Manga helped a lot with the stats. In terms of a year of things I've read, most of the books I've read, and graphic novels included, were published between the year 2000 to 2021. However, I also managed to read 29 new releases, so released in 2022, which was brilliant, because usually I would not read that many new releases, and I think Fairy Loot helped a lot with me trying to keep up with the Fairy Loot books. That helped a lot, pumping up this number. And finally, what I wanted to do to finish this video of just stats is talking about the 2 genres that I read the most. So the second genre that I read the most of was horror. I've read 21 horror books, and the genre that definitely I read the most of, which it's no surprise, it's fantasy. I didn't even count. I'm gonna try and count and put here the number for you, because when I compiled this I didn't count because there are so many fantasy I've read. However, what I also did this year is keep tabs on the subgenre of fantasy books, graphic novels and manga that I was reading. So I'm gonna go through the subgenre of fantasy. I've done a video that was inspired by another booktuber, Daniel Green, where I went through all subgenre of fantasy, or most of subgenre of fantasy out there, and recommended a book that I had liked in that subgenre. And from that I decided to then start keeping tabs, paying notice on the subgenre of fantasy of a book, a graphic novel, manga that I was reading. So I kept tabs of that, and I'm gonna just go through quickly how many subgenre of fantasy I touched upon in this year. Just keep in mind that these categories can be kind of fluid, in the sense that some people might put things, fantasy, in some subcategories that I forgot about, or that are different than mine, because some fantasy touch upon different subgenres. So it is kind of personal, and also there is no official guidance on when you read a fantasy book, it's just shelved as fantasy. It doesn't give you the subgenre. So this is open to interpretations, but also many of these books I decide to fit them in as many categories as possible. So for example, I don't know, if I read Empire of a Vampire, for example, which is a vampire fantasy, but that's also high fantasy because it takes place in a world that doesn't exist, so I would put them in both categories. So this to say, books might belong to more than one category. So without further ado, let's get into the snippets of the stats. So I've read 100 series fantasy, meaning the 100 of fantasy books and comics and so forth I've read were belonging to series. I've read 5 vampire fantasy books, 18 romantic fantasy books, 33 horror fantasy books and graphic novel and manga. Always consider that I include both books and graphic novel and manga in these stats, so I don't have to repeat it all the time. 7 sci-fi fantasy books, 12 paranormal fantasy, 10 medieval fantasy, 11 quest fantasy, 12 portal fantasy, 36 YA fantasy, swashbuckling fantasy, 2 of them I read, 4 steampunk fantasy things, 16 urban fantasy things, 4 magic realism things, 1 gunpowder fantasy thing, 2 that might belong to the erotica fantasy subgenre, 5 that might belong to the court intrigue subgenre of fantasy, 4 Christian fantasy things, 4 assassin fantasy things, 4 alternative history things, 10 comic humoristic things, fantasy things, 7 coming of age fantasy things, 6 high fantasy things, 3 things belong to the dragons subgenre fantasy, 15 were dark fantasy, 15 fables, 4 gaslamp, 6 dystopians, 23 grimdark, and 32 low fantasy. And I've not read anything that I would categorize in Arthurian, hero or superhero fantasy. And if you want to know more about what this subgenre of fantasy stands for, then I'll link down my video, so you can check that out. And yeah, I love keeping tabs on these things, so I think are very interesting. Now my camera is about to die, so I'm gonna go. I'll see you soon with the videos of the best wars and so on. Take care of yourself. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know about your stats and how you ended up 2022 books wise, comic wise, graphic novel wise, and I'll see you next time. Ciao!